What does it mean to be human? Or rather, what defines you as such? Is it your body, emotions, free will, or perhaps the nature of your very soul? This is the central question posed in the opening hours of Ender Magnolia, released into early access just a few weeks ago, and one that sets the stage for the narrative yet to be told. In case you haven't played it, the current build of the game is really more of a demo than anything and contains only the first 4 chapters of the story, but that's enough to make one thing clear. This is an ambitious sequel with a story significantly bigger and more complex than that of Ender Lilies both in scope and theme. Where that game had 70 notes scattered across the map, Ender Magnolia has 100, only 14 of which are available now. More importantly, there is far more dialogue here thanks to the expanded cast of characters. In fact, I would hazard a guess that there is more in these early areas than in all of Ender Lilies combined. Not really a high bar since everyone there is dead and the Umbral Knight isn't much of a talker, but still. You'll notice that this video is a bit different than anything I've done before, as it involves lore analysis of a game not yet finished, but having played through Ender Magnolia twice now, I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. There is so much information to unpack here, so many details that expand our understanding of this world, and to that end, this is how the rest of the video will work. First, I'll give a brief synopsis of the first 4 chapters focusing on the main story beats, which will then be followed by a deeper exploration of the world, characters, and events that have taken place based on what information we have. Needless to say, there are full spoilers ahead for the current early access build and plenty of speculation on what might happen later, so if you'd prefer to play the full release blind, then you definitely shouldn't watch any further. Also, I want to be clear that because this is early access lore, any of it can be changed and no longer be canon. The core elements of the story feel pretty well established, and I would be surprised to see any major changes there, but still, nothing I say or show in this video should be taken as final. Ender Magnolia starts with a memory. Lilac's memory. A woman with pure white hair leans over the girl, calmly reassuring her that everything will be alright, and offers a few words of instruction. Her moment is at hand, and she must seek out allies and find the other attuners. Then, shedding a single tear, the woman seals Lilac into a pod and all goes dark. Sometime later, she awakens, emerging from the open pod to find herself in the wreckage of an old testing facility. With no memory of the place or how she got there, Lilac ventures out into the decrepit passageways beyond and shortly thereafter finds a mysterious combat homunculus, abandoned and left for dead in a field of blue flowers. Recognizing the power Lilac holds, she speaks, requesting a touch of magic in return for her aid, which Lilac freely gives. After rising to her feet and removing the sword impaled through her chest, the homunculus, whose name we later learn is Nola, tells Lilac that her aid comes with a condition, but does not yet reveal what that is. Now with the assistance of Nola's blade, Lilac is able to make her way past many corrupted homunculi and reach the upper part of the facility, where she is attacked by a small child wielding a mechanical fist, Lido. Nola makes quick work of the boy, knocking his face mask to the ground, and when Lilac reaches out with her tuning magic, memories resurface within him. A room of homunculi, getting pulled away from Lilac, receiving the metal fist, and finally being dumped into a test chamber to be gassed with blighted fumes, watching his friends tear each other apart as their minds were driven to madness. But by a stroke of luck he survived and, now liberated by Lilac's touch, joins with her to exit the awful place and ascend to the city above. The place appears utterly destroyed, but at length a gap in the buildings reveals a magnificent palace far away in the distance. The upper stratum, according to Nola, and it is there she says they must go. Continuing on, they soon run into Levi, a young arcane smith in training who points them to Old City, the only refuge for humans left amid the lower stratum. Nola is surprised to see a settlement at all within the thick haze of fumes, and the town's arcane smith Gordon explains that they subsist only due to their arcane instruments. The settlement used to be protected by a homunculus as well, a man named Yolvin, though he too eventually succumbed to the fumes and became hostile. Lilac presses on through the lower stratum to eventually find and liberate him, which reveals he had sworn to protect 2 sisters, though only one, Levi, now remains. His memories still hazy, Yolvin offers to aid Lilac in finding other attuners and suggests they look in the sealed magicite mine. Gordon is able to supply a key to allow entry, but as Lilac makes her way through the lower stratum, she finds a hidden entrance leading somewhere else, the tethered steeple. Once a great prison, the old tower is now consumed by fumes, and at the very base she finds the shackled beast, an especially large and dangerous homunculus affected by the fumes. But he is still no match for Nola, Leto, and Yolvin combined, and at length is defeated. His liberation reveals a curious memory. Captured by the chief attuner, breaking free of his chains, but nonetheless choosing to go along with their plan to help put an end to the nightmare that had befallen the city. And standing in the background, a familiar white-haired woman can be seen, wearing no mask to protect herself from the fumes. The beast explains he had found refuge here in the steeple, but now that there is nothing left to protect, he chooses to accompany Lilac and act as her shield. Together, the young attuner and her homunculi head west to the Magicite mines, a place teeming with both valuable ore and the mutant workers who used to mine it, and in a secluded rest area they find another attuner, Heath. The boy was badly injured by homunculi, most of his team killed by them, and unfortunately knows nothing of Lilac. But what he does know is how to reach the central stratum. At Nola's questioning, he explains that the grand lift in Old City can take them there, but is currently broken and must be repaired first. While Heath makes his way back out of the mines, Lilac delves ever deeper into them and eventually finds the hard stone giving way to soft white flowers. At the center of this great bloom is yet another homunculus, Garm, a giant miner who took it upon himself to bury his fallen homunculus friends. Now extremely unstable himself, he attacks Lilac, and after a terrible fight is finally subdued. Once again, as Lilac reaches out to liberate the poor soul, a memory bursts into the light. The white-haired attuner, thanking the homunculus for saving her, telling him to seek out the magical white flowers untainted by blight, for she will come to his aid where they bloom. And when Garm expresses worry that he will not remember, she drapes a necklace of flowers around his shoulders to ensure he will not forget. Still desiring to help and protect his friends, the gentle giant lends his aid to Lilac, and together the newly expanded team sets out on the next phase of their journey. So that's where the early access ends for now, but it leaves us with quite a bit of new information to go through. Let's start with the setting. It is now confirmed that this is, in fact, the land of the Ancients from Ender Lilies. In his private notes, the chief attuner refers to the priestesses of the Ancients who inhabited this land. But that does not mean this is Land's End, and we actually have strong evidence to suggest it is one of the other 5 nations founded after the Ancients had been defeated. In Yolvin's description, we read that he was experimented on by a renowned homunculus researcher who fled a neighboring country that is no more, and these experiments specifically involved animal fusion. We know that the heretic sorcerers of Land's End were experimenting with animal fusion extensively, and as the blight situation worsened leading up to the Reign of Death, it's not hard to see why some of them might have chosen to flee the land and preserve what knowledge they had. In the Tethered Steeple, we find an interesting note labeled Excerpt from the Book of the Blighted, which is instantly recognizable as a combination of the notes on the Blighted 1 and 2. While we don't know how far apart these two nations are, they share a number of notable features that indicate they are at least part of the same general region. Purple crystals can be found growing in subterranean caverns, and pure white flowers untainted by blight are seen sprouting from cracks in the rock. It is even implied that this land has its own verboten domain. The Bone Bangle description says a bevy of magical resources lie beneath the surface of the Land of Fumes. Indeed, what we call fumes is their magical powers seeping up through the underground. Another curious detail is how the note Defense of the Twin Spires 1 from Ender Lilies states that the blighted ancients attacked after a plague wind blew in from the far east. Sounds an awful lot like fumes to me. Moving past its connection to Land's End, though, another intriguing aspect of the Land of Fumes is the political landscape concerning House Milius and House Frost, 2 prominent families with great influence over the city. Let's talk about Milius first. We are told it was their sorcerers who founded the Land of Fumes, and by all appearances now rule over it. They are responsible for creating the first homunculi, and in time expanded this discovery into a commercial operation that manufactured thousands of them for all kinds of purposes. Some were sent to work in the Magicite mines, others assigned to law enforcement, and some rich families in the upper stratum even used them as personal bodyguards. But despite being mostly human, these homunculi were treated as anything but. The shackled beast speaks of their fates being decided from the day they are born, and we read that many thousands were scrapped, presumably due to flaws or defects. To House Milius, the homunculi were nothing but slaves to be used up and tossed out. Not everyone agreed with this assessment though, including members of House Frost, who also participated in the process of homunculi creation. Their assistance was vital as certain members of the house possessed the unique ability to attune, bringing the consciousness of homunculi under their control. We read in the Chief Attuner's notes that the Frosts were at one point desperate to join with the White Priestess bloodline, and it seems they were successful, as attuning bears strong resemblance to the process of purification. Furthermore, Lilac is instantly recognized as a Frost by multiple homunculi, probably due to her white hair, and you don't need me to tell you that both Lilac and the woman from her memory strongly resemble the priestesses of old. This raises the obvious question, could they be connected to Lily in some way? Perhaps her daughter or even granddaughter? Maybe, but not necessarily. It's true that Lily was the only priestess to survive the fall of Land's End, and she herself was descended from the only priestess to survive the massacre of the Ancients there, but others might have survived in the other 5 nations. Perhaps because of their more spiritual connection to the homunculi, the Frosts were inclined to treat these artificial creations significantly better than Milius, and were even willing to give them refuge when things started to go south. Despite their differences in opinion, however, both houses were united by a common goal. They believed the land was on a timer of some kind, its magic gradually fading away, and to overcome this problem they would need to reach a place known only as the Land of Origins. I find this detail very interesting. You'll recall that the colonists who conquered the Ancients in the First Age came from a distant land, but we are never told what it was like there or why they chose to leave. Could this be the Land of Origins spoken of? And if so, were Milius and Frost trying to find a way to physically return there, or could they be trying to recreate it in some form? We can only speculate at this point, but I'm very interested to see where this thread goes. Unfortunately, as the great houses of the land reached for this ambitious goal, the end came sooner rather than later thanks to the fumes. For reasons still not entirely clear, this thick magical vapor began to rise through the mines and lower stratum, and all homunculi exposed to them began turning mutant, losing their minds and attacking humans. Understandably, this led to wide distrust of the mechanical beings, and many homunculi with nowhere else to go found refuge in the Frost's tethered steeple as previously mentioned. But even this fortified stronghold was eventually consumed by the ever-rising fumes. In response to the crisis, Milius started creating new homunculi models that were more resistant to magical influence, likely using data from awful experiments like the one Leto was subjected to, but even they could not resist the fumes indefinitely. Conditions worsened, and eventually the once bustling city became a wasteland ripped apart by legions of homunculi gone berserk. House Frost was all but destroyed, and Milius survived only in the safety of the upper stratum, a final bastion shining out over the devastation. And though it came quickly, this great destruction did not come as a surprise to everyone. The attuners of House Frost were prepared for it. The white-haired woman tells Lilac as much before sealing her away, and we know that other attuners are still out there trying to help where they can. So that's the state of the city when the game starts, and I think it's about time we turn our attention to the ones responsible, the homunculi. These beings are highly reminiscent of the Lily clones seen in the first game, and while I do think they are fundamentally very similar, there are some key differences that warrant a closer look. On the most basic level, homunculi are artificial lifeforms created through the fusion of magic, a process that involves preserving and replicating souls from a living host. They are understood to be mostly human, and some even appear to be completely human, but the majority we see are made of both organic and mechanical components. Their fates are set in stone from the day they're born, and spells that affect the consciousness are used to ensure they stay true to their purpose. Based on this admittedly limited information, my current theory on how the general creation process might work is as follows. First, homunculi bodies are created in the form of humans out of the pure fungal substance from which the blight originates. Next, they are imbued with a piece of human soul either directly in their flesh or indirectly through mechanical cores containing soul residue. Now sentient, their consciousness is carefully tuned and calibrated to instill in them a singular purpose. Finally, they are augmented with all manner of mechanical prosthetics to enhance their physical capabilities. It would appear this step is done last, since Leto's right arm is forcibly replaced by a metal one shortly before he is sent to the test chamber. Assuming this to be roughly accurate, we can now try to make sense of their fume-induced madness. When homunculi are exposed to the thick vapor, they mutate, and the helix crystal relic provides an interesting possible explanation for why. If the soul residue within a decaying core yearns to resurrect, the magicite responds to its wish and triggers a change. All homunculi are infused with blue magicite through special cores, which gives them their power, but in mutant individuals, these crystals appear fiery reddish-orange instead. Going out on a limb here, it could be that the fumes are so destructive to homunculi because they create severe internal dissonance. The fragment of human soul wishes to resurrect, or be whole again, but this clashes with the artificial purpose implanted within the homunculi, and the resulting misalignment between mind, body, and soul tears them apart. This is where tuning comes in. Lilac appears to have inherited the purification ability held by her priestess ancestors, assuming she does belong to the bloodline, which, to be clear, is not confirmed, but her power is never called purification. Instead, she attunes, and the receiving homunculi are liberated. An interesting word choice considering they are essentially born to be slaves. As for attune, the word has several definitions, but I think the one most applicable here is to harmonize. Lilac is not purifying them of blight, they are already made of the fungus, but rather creating harmony between their mind, body, and soul by liberating them from their artificial purpose. At that point, with the homunculi's permission, Lilac can then absorb their essence into her Argentine vial and call upon them at will. But unlike the blighted spirits of Ender Lilies, they are still fully themselves, able to think and speak much like the Umbral Knight. And for one certain homunculus, I think that comparison can be taken much further. So let's talk about Nola. When Lilac asks for her name in Old City, the woman replies that she has none, or at least not one that she remembers, but when pressed by Leto, she says they can call her Nola. Why? Because that is what she sees engraved on her arm. A mechanical arm worn from years of use and marked by the scars of countless battles until those were the only 4 letters to remain of the name once written there. Magnolia. I believe that not only is Nola the Ender Magnolia, but also happens to be a deathless warrior of the Ancients, and there is substantial evidence to back this up. First, her description states that she exudes an ancient noble aura most unlike other homunculi. Levy's first thought upon meeting her is that she looks very old. She speaks with formal, almost antiquated language that stands out from the rest of the characters and is haunted by wretched dreams. Perhaps dreams of a genocide long lost to time. And finally, we must consider her name. I mentioned in my trailer breakdown that the magnolia flower evolved to be pollinated by beetles, and the reason for this is simple. It is ancient, a prehistoric flower that blossomed long before other pollinators like bees and butterflies even existed. Just like the Umbral Knight, Nola is a warrior from another age, bound to the White Priestess bloodline, and will remain immortal so long as that bloodline continues. But this explanation does leave a few loose ends to tie up. For starters, she obviously bears a great many mechanical augments, so doesn't that make her a homunculi? Perhaps to some degree, but as I discussed earlier, it appears that homunculi are outfitted with these parts after their organic bodies are created, so it is entirely possible that Nola was augmented later as well. Second, what about the fact that Nola served House Milius, not House Frost, the family that actually seems to possess White Priestess blood? For the shackled beast refers to her as the Milius Reaper, and her sword's description confirms that she was indeed the executioner of the Milius family. To be honest, I don't really have an answer for this one yet, though it is notable that Nola is found deep underground with a sword through her chest. She may have turned on the Milius family after uncovering some dark truth, and her condition for helping Lilac is this: to finish the job, reaping the head of Milius from its blood-stained throne. And with that, we've come to the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and found it useful for understanding the story so far, even if many of these theories are to be taken with a grain of salt. I do have plenty more thoughts and theories about Ender Magnolia not covered here, but figured it was probably best not to get too deep into things until the full release when we have all the information, so this is all I had planned for now. That said, I'll definitely be watching for updates and will continue to cover the game as new lore is added. If you'd like to see any of that, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell before you go, and I hope to see you in the next one.